All right, it is a brand new Flyers Daily for the 30th of January, 2025. Flyers Daily presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Tough game for the Flyers last night. We talked about it in yesterday's episode. It was going to be a tough game. Play a team 3 times in 12 days, second half of a home and home where you won the first 2 games. And you knew that you were going to get it all from the Devils last night. And the Devils gave it to them. And I got to give the Devils credit because the big question I have about the Devils this season and going into the playoffs is, are they a team that can play a nasty brand of hockey, play that kind of game? They played a nasty game last night. They really did. And they played a really good game as well. They played a nasty game, but it didn't come at the cost of their offense. I was impressed with the Devils in that game last night against the Flyers. I didn't think the Flyers, it wasn't a lack of effort or anything like that last night. It's the Devils just were the better team, bar none. But the Flyers worked hard. They had good opportunities. Jake Allen was superb getting the shutout. I thought he made some really good saves. The Flyers couldn't get anything by him. And the Devils really pounced on their opportunities. Sam Ersson ends up getting pulled, which we'll get to in a second. I have some thoughts on that. But final score, 5-0 Devils. 26-24 were the shots, 22-11 the hits, both in favor of the New Jersey Devils. No scoring in the first period. Ersson made a couple really big saves at the end of the first period when the Devils got a late power play. But that power play carried over into the second period, and the Devils ended up capitalizing on it on the clean ice 54 seconds in. Andre Palat, just down around the doorstep, is able to get the power play goal. Turns out to be your game winner. That makes it 1-0. Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt with the assist. And then Luke Hughes on the 2-on-1 is able to beat Sam Ersson. Kind of looks Ersson off a little bit. Gets him maybe to flow a little bit to his right and then ends up beating him with the shot. That makes it 2-0 Devils. Then on the power play, Nathan Bastian gets the goal to make it 3-0. Then Dawson Mercer at 13:43. Floodgates are open here in the second period after a tight first period. And at that point, at 13:43 with 6 minutes and 17 seconds to go in the second period, John Tortorella opts for the goalie change and goes to Ivan Fedotov. More on that in a second. Jack Hughes rounds out the scoring, getting the goal on the 2-on-1. Real nice 2-on-1. Great pass from Bratt to Hughes on the goal line, and he puts it in at 1:58 of the third, and that would round out the scoring 5-0 your final. Now, I saw some people on Twitter saying, well, why would you pull Sam Ersson in that game when you have a back-to-back, when they play the Islanders tonight? And I have some thoughts on that. Two reasons why I think it's the right decision. Number one, Sam Ersson has been really good for the Flyers since about Christmas, about 10 games, 11 games. He has a north of 925 save percentage. He's got a great record, good goals against average, playing really well. Looks like he's in rhythm for the first time this season. No reason to keep him in this game and let him get dinged up and let the confidence get shaken. No reason when you're down 4-0. Plus, you're pulling the goaltender not because it was an indictment on his play. It was just to try and change some dynamic in the game, and changing the goaltender can do that sometimes. So that's number one. No problem with pulling him for that reason. And the second reason why I'm in favor of it is you'd rather pull the goaltender between periods because it's better for the backup to be able to get ready to go and get his head in the game. But Fedotov came in with 6 minutes and change on the clock, played well to round out the second period, then played all the third, played well there too. He hasn't played a ton. So getting him into this game, I'm not getting Fedotov into the game so I can rest Ersson for tonight. Tonight's game is Fedotov's game no matter what. It was probably planned that way. It's a scheduled start for him. Him playing 1 period in 6 minutes and 17 seconds last night is not detrimental at all for him to play tonight. I think he plays tonight. And I think that 6 minutes and 17 seconds and the 20 minutes of the third are good for him to get in there and get in the flow of some game action. I think that actually helps Fedotov tonight. Doesn't hurt him because it's not an exorbitant amount of usage for a guy that doesn't get used a ton. I think it actually helps tonight. So I was all in favor of pulling Ersson there. I thought it was only upside to pulling Ersson in that game last night and when they pulled him in that game last night. I don't see the downside of because they're on a back-to-back. I really don't. Now, there's downside in the back-to-back. I don't like the back. I had a guy on Twitter hit me up and say, Ersson shouldn't even have played tonight. It should have been Fedotov tonight and then Ersson against the team tomorrow night in the back-to-back because his feeling was, well, they weren't going to win this game anyway because it was the third time they're playing this team in 12 days. So why even play your top goaltender? He said he should not have started in the first game with the game against the rested Islanders tomorrow, which is tonight. They were never going to win this game anyway. And I said, I don't agree with that. You always start your best goalie against the better team and on the front end of a back-to-back. In hindsight, you can say you shouldn't have started him, but in pre-planning, no. And he said, well, I've always believed you start your backup in the first game of back-to-backs. Otherwise, you're almost waving the white flag for the second game when that opponent is rested. Well, first of all, the second opponent isn't always rested when you're on a back-to-back. In this case, they are. But it's not waving a white flag. That's part of the gig for a backup goaltender. And I don't see any teams around the NHL that start the backup on the front end of a back-to-back, unless there's other mitigating circumstances. But teams usually always start the starting goaltender on the front end of a back-to-back, and the backup goaltender gets the second part of it. It's not waving a white flag. It's the reality. All right, two more things for this episode. First and foremost, I did receive a little bit of pushback on what I talked yesterday about Matvei Michkov's minutes and his usage and his average time on ice. I went on a rant about it yesterday. If you want to go back and hear that rant, you can go back in yesterday's episode. But I wanted to play this clip from this week's Hockey and Hounds of me and John Tortorella talking about it. And in this clip, you'll see Torts in this clip. And read his body language. These people have this assumption that Torts wakes up in the morning and thinks of the first thing he thinks of as a way to keep Matvei Michkov from getting too confident or whatever, getting too full of himself too early in his career, which is beyond ludicrous. So I asked Torts about this in Hockey and Hounds, and here's his response about managing Matvei Michkov right now. How are you managing Mich right now? At times it looks like his legs are pretty dead.
Struggle. Yeah.
Mentally a little bit too. He's still making plays at times.
Yeah.
The consistency's not there. How you managing him?
Yeah, as I see it, I manage it. Like last night, he doesn't play much in the third period. He looks slow. We're defending a lead against a really high potent offense. If they score one with 9 or 10 minutes left, they're going to try to ramp it up on us. So he lost some ice time there. Trying to put him in spots to help him, offensive spots, power play. He won't miss a power play, but it's going to get harder for him.
Not getting easier.
No, he started off great, a lot more energy. I think the travel has really worn on him. The amount of games that we're playing especially a year of 4 nations.
Yeah.
It's a lot for a 20-year-old kid that's not used to this type of travel, not used to the conditioning that we try to go through. I don't think it's one of the biggest things we have to do right after the season is make sure we get him the right conditioning program. So I don't think he's in the best shape. He's probably in good shape, how he feels, but not the shape you need to be in to handle this type of grind. So I got to pick and choose where I put him. And I know there's a lot of spotlights on him as far as going to be a star and all that. Let's just slow ourselves down. We're trying to manage a 19, now 20-year-old kid to understand what it is to play in the National Hockey League. And if people piss and moan about where I put him or the lack of ice time at certain times, I don't care. I owe it to him to try to do the best I can for him to help him grow as a player here.
Biggest thing with him coming over 2 years early is that he's learning this now, what it takes to play in this league.
It's huge. And I don't care how much of a struggle he has for the next 30-plus games, because it's going to be a struggle. You know how it is. It gets locked down coming up here after this break. And then you start eyeing the playoffs. All these teams are jockeying. It gets locked down. There's not going to be a lot of room. It's going to be painful for him sometimes.
It's heavier.
Yeah, and I'm going to handle him the proper way and trying to help him succeed. And sometimes to help a young player succeed is take him out of spots and just try to pick and choose the spots to help him, to put him in areas that he will have some opportunity.
If you can watch that clip and tell me that you still think John Tortorella doesn't want ultimate success for the player, and you believe that, I say take off the tinfoil hat. Get out of the conspiracy theories, because he wants nothing but for that kid to have a success. And he is doing, and the team is doing what they think is right to develop him properly for ultimate success in the NHL. That's that. All right. Last thing. I want to talk about what the NHL can learn from the Flyers' schedule this week. First of all, the Flyers have played the Devils 3 times in 12 days. And I think that's great. I think that the Flyers and teams in the NHL should have a home and home against a divisional opponent, every divisional opponent in a season. I truly believe that because the one thing the NHL lacks now is storyline. The NHL for years, you played your division a ton when there was less teams. So there was more familiarity, which breeded more contempt, more hatred, more sports hate, more rivalry, more this player against that player, this team against that team, this coach against that coach, whatever it is, because there was so many times that they played each other. And that's a good thing. Today's NHL is incredibly skilled, incredibly fast, incredibly technical, incredibly coached in a lot of instances. And the one thing it lacks is some of that old storyline. Like I remember back in the 80s and the 90s when I was growing up, and this isn't just because you think when you were growing up things were better when you were a kid than they are now, but I remember when guys like Ty Domi would come to town, when the Rangers would come to town and you had Ron Duguay or you had Tomas Sandstrom. You had those battles against certain guys, Larry Murphy, Larry Robinson when he played for the Montreal Canadiens. Gartner when he played for Washington. You had all these guys that you'd see and you'd build up a hatred towards them. And it was storyline because you saw them so many times and there was a lot of scar tissue that builds up between those teams. So I think, you should play every team in your division 4 times. And you should play every team in your division in a home and home at least one time in the season. So that's something I think the NHL needs to do. I think we need more storyline. We need more city by city sports villains. We need more guys to sports hate against, like Matthew Barnaby, Dominic Hasek. I think you need more of that regional confrontation in the game. I think it brings back storyline. I think it brings back sports hate, which is all good. That's fun. Like this 3-game series against the Devils, Flyers went 2-1, but it was fun. And in that third game, there was a lot of calling cards set. Guys want to settle some scores for some things they thought were cheap shots or whatever it was. The hit that Nick Seeler gets on Bastion in the one game. Bastion admitted he went low and didn't protect himself well. Then you saw the hit that Tippett took, which I didn't like because Brendan Dillon left his feet. And we'll see if Tippett's okay to go tonight. I hope he is. Didn't return in the game, which is a little scary, and he didn't look great going off the ice. But I think that storyline and that familiarity of opponent and that regional aspect of opponents that are geographically close to you in location breeds a lot of storyline. So I say, NHL, take note. More of that, please. I think the home and home against the teams in your division should always happen in the second half of the season when it's really kind of matters even more. I think that would be great for the NHL. And conversely, I think the NHL needs to take note because, again, this week, the Flyers are going to face the Islanders, and the Flyers are on a back-to-back, and the Islanders are not. The Flyers lost to the Islanders back on January 24th. The Islanders hadn't played since Monday. The Flyers played them Friday. The Flyers played Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday that week. The Islanders hadn't played since Monday. And the Flyers had 2 games in between when they played that game and were on a back-to-back on the road. Like, that's ridiculous. I know it's hard to make an NHL schedule with 32 teams and the computer spits it all out, but you got to avoid that as much as possible because here we are again tonight. And the Flyers are facing the Islanders, albeit in Philadelphia. And the Islanders laying in Philadelphia, laying in wait last night when the Flyers were traveling home from New Jersey by bus, hadn't played since Tuesday when the Islanders were at home against Colorado and got a 5-2 win. Islanders are on a 5-game win streak right now. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Like the NHL's got to do a better job of leveling that playoff field schedule field, leveling the playing field by not having a team face a team multiple times when they're on a back-to-back and the opponent is not. To me, you should be able to put that into the computer program with the the AI we have nowadays and be able to figure that out. I need to see less of that. And it's not just because it's the Flyers and in this situation twice. All teams are in this situation. And I get it. Look, there's more teams in this situation this year than maybe past years because of the Four Nations. I'm not even in favor of doing a Four Nations to stop a season for 2 weeks. I think if you're going to do a Four Nations or a Canada Cup or whatever it is, World Cup of Hockey, you do it before the season. I don't think you stop a season. Now, this year, stopping the season is going to be really interesting. Go listen to the Hockey and Hounds this week. Torsten and I talked about this. How teams come back from the 2-week break is going to be so detrimental. Some teams that are in playoff position right now, there's going to be one that's in playoff position right now, comes back, doesn't get their game back, and they end up missing the playoffs. Guarantee it. There's going to be some teams that come back that aren't in the playoff mix right now, come back and find their game, and the break was great for them. It's how the teams handle, the players handle the break and when they get back. And I don't know what the recipe is. You know, they're going to send all their players that aren't playing in the Four Nations home with some sort of workout program and skating program. And, you know, it's going to be incumbent upon the players to make sure they stick with it and stay at it so they don't lose any part of their game over the 2 weeks. But how they come back after the Four Nations is going to be incredibly interesting to me. How you finish going into Four Nations this next week coming up and how you come out of Four Nations. For the Flyers, that's going to be the Islanders tonight. Then they're going to kick off February schedule in Colorado, in Utah on the 2nd and 4th. Then they'll come home against Washington and Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh game is going to be bananas. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's Saturday night, Wells Fargo Center, Flyers, Penguins, the day before the Eagles play the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That place is going to be friggin' rocking. I can't wait for that game. Then they have the Four Nations break, and then they're going to have out of the break at home, Edmonton, who's got a couple players playing in Four Nations, including their best player, Connor McDavid, at Wells Fargo. Then they're going to play Pittsburgh at home as well. And then they're going to go to Pittsburgh for a home and home on the 25th and 27th. So got to go into it strong, and you got to come out of it strong. If you can do that with the 7 total games you have in the month of February, you can play some really meaningful hockey in March if you're the Flyers. That's what needs to be done. All right, Flyers Islanders tonight. We'll break it down tomorrow on a brand new Flyers Daily.